Welcome to Lead Is to Learn, the podcast where we explore the theories and thoughts behind leadership, your career, and your personal growth. I'm your host, Chris Waters, and today we're doing something a little different. Welcome to Lead Is to Learn. Now, in this special episode of the podcast, we're going to be starting a new series called Lessons in Leadership. Now, these are the lessons that I've learned throughout my career and through doing this podcast around leadership, which I've put together. It's going together into a book, but it's also coming together into these episodes, which we will be going through the book and through the leadership strands, which I've identified. These go alongside the leadership standards, which you can find on the LAMDA website at www.lamda.co.uk. But let's get straight into this episode, which is all around self-leadership, our first strand. And we're going to be doing the next sequence of episodes, the Lessons in Leadership episodes, around this strand of self-leadership. One of the most foundational things we have in our toolkit when we consider leadership is our self-leadership, particularly when we are leading teams and in organizations. It is true what they say. You cannot pour from an empty glass. So, when we are looking to lead others, we need to make sure that we are correct and right within ourselves. Therefore, self-leadership should underpin everything that we do. Now, this is important because when we are leading teams, we should be looking to care for them, to look to develop and grow them as individuals in order to maximize their potential. In order to do all of those things, we need to first look inside, look inwards, and consider what it is that we have ourselves to develop. Now, how we show up as an individual every day consistently is important. Now, this is called our leadership wake. Our leadership wake is important. This is how the room reacts before we enter it and after we leave it. So before we enter it, there is a wake that precedes us. This is, for example, if they know that you are going to be coming into the room today, how do they act? How do they change? Do they carry on the way they were doing? Do they feel there's going to be a positive experience? Do they feel it's going to be a negative experience? This comes from how we have consistently showed up before. Then there is the wake that we leave behind. This is when we leave the room, how do they react? Do they turn to each other and go, oh, what was that? Or do they have that positive impact, that positive energy that's come from you? Your interaction has improved how they are going to show up that day. If that's the case, then you have a positive leadership wake. And that comes from how you have worked on yourself. One of the best quotes about this comes from Eleanor Brown, where she said, "Rest and self-care are so important. When you take time to replenish your spirit, it allows you to serve others from the overflow. You cannot serve from an empty vessel." Now, this is important because leadership, one of the most important and fundamental groundworks of leadership, is the act of service. We are there to ensure that those in our charge are able to do the best that they can. So the first idea is going to be the Pygmalion effect. Now, with the Pygmalion effect, everything starts with our beliefs, and that is our beliefs as a leader about others, about those in our team. This is what we think and we feel about them. What do we believe their potential is? What do we believe their current capabilities is? What do we believe their reaction is going to be to a certain thing? Now, this leads to our actions. How do we interact with them because of these beliefs? Do we maybe not give them certain pieces of work? Do we maybe tell them, oh, don't worry if you can't do this? Do we start giving little snippets to them about our beliefs in the way we act with them? Now, this ultimately feeds into their beliefs about themselves. What do they believe their capabilities is? What do they believe they're able to do? What do they believe your view of them is? This then feeds into their actions. Maybe that limits how they show up. Maybe it gives them an excuse to not achieve the maximum potential. Maybe they think, oh, don't worry, they don't really care about this because they've told me that it doesn't matter if I don't do well. And ultimately, the way that they act and they show up feeds back into our beliefs. So if we have a negative belief and we act from that, they will then react to that and act in a way in line with our beliefs, which reinforces our beliefs. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So what this shows is that the way that we as a leader think and act towards our team really does have an impact on the way that they perceive themselves and the way that they show up to work. This is because the level of influence that we have over them is much higher than everyone else around them. So the way we think about them, or at least the way they think that we think about them, is really important. This can have a major impact on the way that they can perform when they're at work and the way that they experience work as well. Therefore, it's really important for us to work on one of two things. Now, maybe we might have some negative connotations about some of the people that we work with. We might think that maybe they don't perform in a particular way, or maybe they're not very good at particular things. That belief actually shows up in our actions, and therefore the members of our team know we think this about them. So either we work on our thoughts and we start believing that they can do better, like genuinely, truly believing it, or we start intentionally acting as if we do. Now, one of these two things, it doesn't matter which one we start with, but one of these two things will then have an impact on that individual. They will then show up better, and they will therefore start acting towards those goals that we have kind of set them, those levels that we expect of them. If we show them that we think that they can behave in a particular way, whether that's our true beliefs or the actions we're portraying, they will then start working towards that. And by working towards that, it then has this feedback action into our beliefs. We start seeing that they can do better, and then we start believing they can do better. And then our actions start aligning with our beliefs. So we either work on the way we think about them, or we intentionally act as if we do believe that particular thing about them, because they can only ever start working towards that, and that will feed into our beliefs of the team. And that's great, because if they start performing better, we all start performing better. Now, cognitive dissonance theory is really important. There are two ways of behaving. There's behaving in line with our internal beliefs, the way we view, and there is behaving which is in line with the external pressures. Sometimes these are not in line with each other. If they are, perfect. So cognitive dissonance is really important as a leader, because we will have our internal values, our internal beliefs about situations, and we will also have the way that we have to act. Now, there is usually going to be an expectation, particularly if we are in middle leadership, of us behaving and performing a particular way. Now, we can either have our values and those behaviors, they could potentially be overlapped, and that's perfect, because then we're not in dissonance at all. Okay. But what could happen is we might be expected to show up a particular way, to behave a particular way, maybe ask particular things that we do not agree with, and our beliefs are over here. Now, we can either choose to do one of two things. Either we look to change the way we are behaving to be more in line with our beliefs, or we need to change our beliefs to be more in line with our behaviors. Because if we're going to stay there and stay in this role, in this position, we cannot always be within dissonance. That can lead to serious problems further down the line. Instead, we have to make sure that they align in one way. Now, either we stay there and we then start acting against the system, which can lead to further problems, or we can maybe try and internalize some of those external pressures and start looking at our beliefs and maybe changing some of those. Could the way we're being asked to behave actually be more in line with a similar belief, and therefore we maybe need to question our belief? The problem that would arise if we do not align the two could well be it could lead to burnout, because we're too busy trying to behave in a way that's not aligned with who we are, and we start questioning that. Or it could lead to a crisis of identity. Do we identify as a leader? Do we believe we are meant to be there? This starts off with imposter syndrome, but it can lead to massive questioning on whether or not we're good enough to be doing this job, whether we belong being a leader, whether we are actually worth being a leader. We're worried about being found out, about losing our job every single day because we are not in line with what the company wants. Now, the theory of planned behavior has three key ideas. There's behavioral intentions, which is our internal beliefs. There's subjective norms, which is what we perceive are normal behaviors in a given situation. And then there is the perceived control, which is the extent to which we believe we have control over our actions and the level of the performance that we can bring. Let's say, for example, we have to make a challenging decision. Something has happened, a situation has arisen, and we as the leader have to make that decision. We have to act from our three pillars. Our behavior intention. What is the intention behind it? Our subjective norms. What is the expectation of us as the leader? And our perceived level of control. How much control do we have to actually make that decision and to perform that decision in the moment and to be able to communicate it correctly? If any of those three things are causing a stick, a block, we can then end up with decision paralysis, where we delay making that decision. We delay having that meeting, that really important, challenging, difficult discussion with someone. We could also end up with the imposter syndrome again. We could end up having doubts about our ability because maybe we might not think that we're able to make that decision in that moment because it's delayed, because maybe our perceived level of control. We don't think we have the empowerment to make the right decision. We feel like we have to relay it to the person above us. Or it might be the fact that we don't actually believe that we're supposed to be making that decision as the leader. We feel like actually someone much higher up is supposed to be doing that. It's not our job to make this call, to make this decision. We don't believe we belong in that situation. Now, ultimately, the level of perceived control and the societal expectations, they affect the confidence that we have in our leadership. If we believe that others think that we're going to behave in a particular way, and we believe we have a level of control that allows us to behave in that particular way, then we are confident that we can. When we are able to align all three of these, what we have hit is the sweet spot on leadership. We believe we're in full control, we believe that others think that we can do the job, and our internal beliefs are in line with what we're about to do. That is the sweet spot for leadership. As well as children learning in this particular way, and we've all seen that out in the playgrounds, an older child behaves in a certain way and the younger child starts copying that. So as well as children doing that, we as adults actually tend to do it as well, particularly if we look at a person, let's say a person in a more senior position, and we are looking to emulate that person. We want to reach that position. We want to be the CEO in the business. So we look to the CEO and we start trying to act in particular ways that aligns with them, particularly if it aligns with our internal belief system. Therefore, as a leader in the team, it is our responsibility to show up in a way that those in our team look to emulate. So, for example, this is a really big one. If we turn up stressed every day, we turn up and we wear our stress on our sleeve, what actually happens is the members of our team look to us and they go, well, he's really stressed. Maybe we should be stressed as well. Maybe this job is more important. Maybe this particular project that we're working on is really serious and we need to therefore be taking it slightly more seriously. We need to be getting it done quickly, and they start acting fast paced because you are stressed. Whereas if we show up calm, collected, a little bit slower, a little bit more measured, then they're going to start taking time with their decisions. They're going to start making better decisions because they are in a calmer environment. Yes, there is time to work quickly. Yes, there is time for pressure, but if we don't want them to feel stressed, if we don't want them to burn out, then we should make sure that we're not showing up in that particular way. We could also start looking towards maybe owning our failures, celebrating other successes. If we do that, members of our team will do that. They will turn up and be like, oh, I'm really sorry, I screwed this decision up. I was meant to do this, but it just didn't work out well. If they're in a situation where they feel able to own their failures, they will perform better. And that starts from us also owning our failures and our shortcomings. We need to make sure that we are looking to those above that we want to emulate and looking to reflect the positive behaviors, but equally displaying with our team how we want them to behave. We should never ask of them what we aren't reasonably willing to do ourselves. Now, if the actions that we are observing others having are in line with our internal belief system, they're more readily adopted. You will notice that people pick up little actions, little things from those around them, and they're usually from the people that are most like them, or at least most like what they would like to be like. Now, this can feed into conformity and societal expectations, which is something we're going to cover in a future episode, so I won't go into it too much here. The key element here is that observation leads to adoption, and therefore how leaders behave, us and the leaders above us potentially, is what others will naturally pick up, the members of our team or even us. So it's really important here that we embody the behavior that we wish those in our team to do. Now, as well as looking to others and emulating their behavior, we also learn a lot from self-reflection. Now, this naturally happens at the end of every day, maybe on the train ride home or the car journey back home, or maybe sometimes even laying in bed and thinking about the day before you go to sleep. What tends to happen is we start looking over what happened in that particular day. That is because we learn about ourselves. We actually innately don't know our own personal value system. It is not a conscious thing that's in our mind. It doesn't run in the back of our head that these are our values. Instead, when we look over and reflect on our last day, week, month, year, 5 years, 10 years, when we reflect on our lives, that is when we learn what our internal belief system is. So it's really important at the end of every day, at the end of every week, as a leader, we look back over some of the decisions we've made, the way we've shown up, and some of the behaviors that we've exhibited that particular day, week, month. When we do that, we can start to learn what our internal belief system might be, and we can start to impact on it and change our internal beliefs. We can only ever develop ourselves if we're aware of ourselves. That comes from reflection. So becoming more self-aware will allow us as leaders to identify and shift our behaviors that maybe do not align with our leadership goals. So cognitive behavioral theory really starts with our thoughts, and this is what we think and how that affects how we feel and how we act. Now, aligned with that is two other things. So the first is our emotions. This is what we feel, and that affects how we think and how we act. Then you have your behaviors. This is what we do, and what we do affects how we think and how we feel. So ultimately, these three things all tie in together. So how can we use cognitive behavioral theory to actually impact our leadership? Well, this is quite important because really what it comes down to is those three things, and only one of them can we really work too much on, and that is our thoughts. The way we behave, as we've seen before with other theories, comes from and is preceded by our thoughts. The way we feel and feel about ourselves comes from our actions and reflecting on them. Were they in line with our beliefs, with our thoughts, and our thoughts? Sometimes the way we feel is governed by the way we thought about something. We may not have acted upon it, but the fact that we thought a particular thing about a particular person, maybe that might make us feel a little guilty inside. So all three of these comes down to working on our thoughts. And that's where cognitive behavioral therapy comes in. They start trying to look at your limiting beliefs. We as leaders can do that too. If we look at our limiting beliefs, what are our limiting beliefs? What are our dysfunctional beliefs? Maybe, for example, we believe that X, Y, and Z cannot do something. Maybe we believe that we cannot do something. Maybe we believe that we can only ever work within this refined structure, when actually there is much bigger potential out there. So if we as leaders start questioning and challenging our limiting beliefs, the limiting beliefs we have over ourselves and over our teams, what we'll see is that we can progress much, much further. So one of the great ideas and great set of questions that I've ever come across is three simple questions, three questions that we can ask ourselves. First one, if not this, then what? So we're coming across a challenge. We have a limiting belief. We sit there and we go, well, if we're not going to do this, the thing we've always done, then what are we going to do? If not now, then when? So if we're not going to do it now, then when is it going to get done? When are we going to be able to overcome this challenge? Is it 5 years' time, 10 years' time? Why is it not now? And then, if not us, then who? If we're not the team, if I'm not the leader, if this is not the people that we need, then who is it? Do we need to onboard someone? Do we need to hire new talent? Do we need to upskill them? Do I need to maybe pass it off to someone else, another team? But really, we should be looking first at ourselves. Why can't we be doing it? Why am I limiting it to we're not able to do this? So great set of questions there to really challenge our limiting beliefs. So self-determination theory. In this theory, there are three key pillars, and these three pillars are autonomy, the level of autonomy over our actions, competence, the level of competence we believe that we have to complete these actions, and value, which is the value we place in the behavior and the outcome of the action. Now, these three things are both intrinsic and extrinsic motivators which drive our behavior. So our behaviors really rest on these three pillars: autonomy, competence, and value. So these three pillars are really key, and we need to reflect on each one. Do we value the act of leading others? So a lot of people get promoted into leadership positions because of how well they had done their job beforehand. And therefore they start valuing more their results, their outcome. And really a true leader should be looking at developing and growing others. So do you value the leading of others? Do you value them performing well? Maybe not you getting the results and getting all the credit, but them getting the credit. Do you value that? How good do you feel about yourself leading? Do you feel you have the ability and the capability? Remember, leading requires us to always learn. We should always be looking at reflecting on our leadership and getting better. We could be the best leader yesterday, but if we show up today, we may not be doing the same thing and getting the same results. It should be different each day. We should be looking at making better choices, better decisions, and learning more each day. So are we actually actively looking to develop our leadership every single day? Because that is how we get better. And last but not least, autonomy. At what point do we feel like we can actually make the decisions? Do we value making those decisions? Do we value being in control? Do we value empowering others? Do we value the leading of their growth? Do we value training our individuals in our teams? Do we value maybe working with a person to promote them above us? That's a big question as a leader. Would we take that as a knock to our pride, or would we take pride in it? So these three things really are key when we think about this theory and our leadership. So in attribution theory, there are two key attributors. That is external, which we call situational, which is often to do with the people around us and the environment we're in, and the internal, which is our dispositional. This is, are we predisposed to act in a particular way? So this balance really between the internal locus of control and the external locus of control is important as a leader. We as a leader really need to make sure that we are attributing correctly the results, the failures, the outcomes, and our decision making. Are we putting and are we attributing it to the correct place? So when a decision gets made and a failure comes in, is it our fault or is it someone else? Was it a result of the situation? Was X in the team, was it their fault? Because really as a leader, it should be you taking it and saying, okay, it was my fault. Even if it was a situation, sorry, I didn't read that situation correct. It was my fault. Whereas if there's success, it's not, okay, I led this team to success. What really it should be is, well done X for your contribution. Well done Y for your contribution. Well done X for what you did there. Okay, we should make sure that we are attributing it publicly in the correct place. And when we come to reflecting on ourselves later on, we really are taking ownership. How could I have improved my decision making? What did I do well this time that I could do better next time? So this idea of attributing to the correct thing to the correct place is key as a leader. And if we are not doing this correctly, we aren't working on our leadership. So we need to work on ourselves here. Do we make sure that we attribute blame and success to the right place? Now, going alongside this, there is the idea that with the internal reasons, when we attribute something internally, we have an internal belief, therefore, that we have the ability to change how we act and to behave in line with that. Whilst if we attribute it externally, what we're really doing is we are saying it's not our fault. We had to do X because of Y. We were trying to find a reason and excuse as to why we did what we did. Now, humanistic theories have been around for about 100 years. They can be traced back to Elton Mayo and the idea that he had of the social person in the workplace. And in a sense, HR has been built off of this. Now, this is really looking at job security, training and mentoring people, positive working conditions. But really, the first real humanistic theory that stuck was Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is pretty much in every single leadership development training program that you'll ever go on. Now, really, this hierarchy of needs starts with the base idea. So the base idea is physiological needs, the needs for air, to be able to breathe, food, to be able to eat and sustain yourself, and water. Once we have our physiological needs met, those base needs, we can then build from that. So the level above that is safety needs. So that's security, having a house to live in, having a roof over your head, law and order. So living in a society where you naturally feel safe to be able to go outside, to be able to live. On top of that is our belonging and love needs. So this is having friends, friendship, having a partner, having that love and affection, feeling like you belong here on planet Earth. On top of that is our esteem needs, our level of status, respect and strength. Are we respected by our peers? Are we respected by people that we work with? Do we feel strong? Do we feel that we're able to hold ourselves in a particular way to have that status? At this point, we kind of have a natural separator. These 4 needs are considered your deficiency needs. If you don't have one of these 4, then you naturally feel deficient in life. You naturally feel like you cannot perform at a base level. Above this is then 4 additional needs. On top of this is our cognitive needs. That is, do we know stuff? Have we learned things? Do we have a level of understanding and curiosity about the world around us and the work we are doing? This is where maybe challenge comes in. Above that is aesthetic needs. Do we have an appreciation and a search for beauty? Do we look out on the world and do we see natural beauty and do we appreciate that? Because often if we're so inside ourselves, we aren't able to look out and see this. On top of that is self-actualization, seeking personal growth and peak experiences. In this sense, it might be going out of your way to learn something above and beyond what you need to. Having a hobby, having a love and an enjoyment of doing something. Having that sense of being able to accomplish something and realize your full potential, that exists here. And right at the top is transcendence. So this is religious and experience with nature. This is just being at one with the world around us. Feeling like we really do belong. And all of these are our growth needs. So we have our deficiency needs at the bottom, where if we don't have one, we're just going to recede into ourselves a little bit, and we're not going to be able to perform at a base level. And the 4 at the top, growth needs. This is being able to grow and being able to perform at maximum potential. And really, as a leader, we should be looking for ourselves and our team to really be in that growth needs section. We as an employer should be looking to provide them with financial stability to be able to provide their own physiological and safety needs. We should be giving them a level of respect. We should be empowering them so that they have the self-esteem needs. They feel that they are able to perform the job. And then we can then provide them with challenge to meet their cognitive needs. We can provide them with an environment that they feel like they want to come into and they feel at one with, so that they can therefore reach that self-actualization. Very few people ever reach that, but we as a leader should be working towards ourselves and our teams reaching that. We will be looking at this theory in a later episode in much more depth. However, one thing I want to point out here really is the fact that past traumas do impact our present day decisions, the present day way we behave and show up. And therefore, what's really key in this is that we look to work on these. We may be 30, 35, 40, 50 years old, but still what happened in our childhood really does play an important role. And we may think that we have dealt with it. We may have put it into a box and put it somewhere, or just forgotten about it, or, oh, we grew up and got over it, this idea. But actually it still shows up in subtle ways. And particularly in moments of high stress and high pressure, in those moments, bang, it can really come to the front. We might blow up for no reason. We might react in a way that we don't agree with. So what's really important here, and the reason I want to bring this up, is when we are working on our self-leadership, the idea of therapy and working through past traumas, even if we think we've dealt with it, is an important role or of part of our triad, if we like, of ways that we can work to develop a support system that will help us improve as a leader. Therapy is key. If we're not taking care of ourselves, how can we take care of those in our team? So if you are the average of the 5 people that you spend most of your time with, let's say at work, let's not even include outside of work. If you are the result of the 5 people you spend most time with, who is it that they are? Are you in the right room? Are you spending enough time with the right people? So some of those obviously are going to be members of your team, but you equally need to make sure that you are spending time with people that you want to emulate. If you want to work your way up, if you want to develop your leadership, you need to spend time with the leaders that you look up to and therefore look to emulate their behavior from. So if you were that person and the 5 people that you were spending most of your time with were maybe looking at socializing too much, they were taking a lot of coffee breaks, they weren't really getting on with their work, let's say. So they're down here. If you're the average of them, you walk into that room, you spend most of your time with them, you're just going to work downwards. You're not going to bring them up, really. They'll come up a little bit because of your presence, but you're going to go down. Whereas if you are here, your members of your team are maybe here, there's a member of your team that's abilities here, and you've got a couple of people up here, for example, that's going to raise you up. So really think about, who is it you spend most of your time with? Those 5 people. Are you in the right room? Are you spending time with the right people? So, key summary here. Self-leadership underpins everything. And you see the arrow I put here shows that self-leadership leads to external leadership. We cannot lead others if we aren't able to lead ourselves. If we can't work on ourselves and develop and grow ourselves, how can we expect others to with our influence? So, what comes under self-leadership? Well, really, this is our internal beliefs. Underpins everything. This is how we perceive ourselves and others. So this can include our personal values, our level of control, how much control do we have over ourselves and the way we behave and act, our autonomy, our freedom to make decisions and choices as a leader, and our competence, our ability to actually perform the act of leadership. Once we have this leads to action, our action towards others, which can feed into the way that they believe about themselves. Now, our actions can involve our behaviors, our intentions behind those behaviors, and our reactions to others' behaviors. They are all actions that are externally facing and build from our internal belief system. Finally, external leadership then is our level of influence. How much influence do we have over others? Now, this is on the individuals within the team as well as the outcome of the work they're doing. And our influence really is a measure of our reputation, of the level of trust others have in us, and of our effectiveness as a leader. So, really, what can we do? And it comes down to 2 key things. we need to spend some time on reflection. This is reflecting over our actions and our internal beliefs. Only when we spend time on reflection can we then develop self-awareness, which is an awareness of our self-leadership, our values, our level of control over ourselves, our autonomy, and our competence. Self-awareness tells us these things. If we don't have self-awareness, we don't know anything about our self-leadership. We therefore don't know why our actions are the way they are, and therefore we don't have any control over our external leadership. Without self-awareness, we have nothing as a leader. So what are some practical takeaways, things that you could be doing from tomorrow? So really what we should be looking to do here is intentionally schedule times for reflection. We mentioned this earlier. Maybe at the end of each day, maybe at the end of each week. They're ones that I really work at. End of each day and end of each week. If you're regularly reflecting on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday on the end of your day, and then your Friday's reflection is about the whole week, and you do that intentionally every single week. How did I show up? What decisions did I make that was great? What decisions did I make that wasn't great? What could I be doing more of? What could I be doing less of? What do we as a team need to be doing more of? What do we as a team need to be doing less of? If you're constantly reflecting, particularly on yourself, you can develop yourself. Equally then, who are we spending time watching, looking at, looking up to? Remember, we are the average of those 5 people that we spend time with. Remember, we learn by emulating from others. So who are we intentionally going out of our way to watch? Are we sitting in on other people's team meetings maybe? Are we spending time in observing someone in a small interaction for like 5 minutes? Are we just looking over and just going, how did they show up there? What worked really well? What can I learn from that? So who are we intentionally observing? As a part of this, remember we can always learn from observing those below us, not only those above us. After all, we cannot pour from an empty glass. Therefore, are we taking care of ourselves? Are we making sure we're sleeping correctly? Are we making sure that we're eating healthily? Are we making sure we've got a healthy lifestyle? Are we going out? Are we exercising? We cannot care for others if we're not caring for ourselves. Remember I said it earlier. We should not ask of others what we're not willing to do ourselves. If we are trying to preach work-life balance, are we doing that? Because they see that. They look at us. They see, are we working from a good work-life balance? Sometimes even thought of as a work-life integration. Are we making sure we're taking care of ourselves? Because only when we lead by example can they follow that example. Now, I mentioned that triad of support: the mentor, the coach, the therapist. The therapist works on our grounding, our psychological basis, which everything builds from. This is where we work on our traumas. This is where we work on any limiting personal self-deprecating beliefs about ourselves. Coaching, where we look to develop our skill, our technique, our beliefs in work. And then we got our mentor, the person that's going to teach us the specifics about the job that's going to get us better. If we have all 3 of those in place, we cannot help but really fly, succeed in our position. One of those out of kilter, one of those out of joint, then we're not going to be able to make the maximum growth and maximum potential. And lastly, be in the right room. Make sure we're spending time intentionally learning from and growing with the right people. If we really are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with, who are those 5 people? Do we maybe need to change who we spend our time with at work?
And until next time, remember, to lead requires us to continuously